morning, everyone, and welcome to the VMware session here at Atea Action. My name is Michael Monberg. I've been flown in here all the way from Denmark. So I can do this presentation in English, or if you prefer, I can do it in Danish. So which one would it be?
English.
All right, no problem. So the topic of today would be VCloud Air. So how many of you guys have heard of VCloud Air? You all know about the iPad Air, right? Yeah, okay. So VCloud Air. Let me dive directly into the hardcore stuff. VCloud Air, what is that? VCloud Air is not a license that you buy for your own data center. VCloud Air is a way for you guys to extend your own data center. So why would you do that? Basically, if you're looking at exponential growth, but you don't want everything in your own data center, VCloud Air is for you. So what are the use cases? Well, let's look at the infrastructure side of it. So if we look at VCloud Air as a service, we can supply you with unlimited amounts of resources looking at the infrastructure side, okay? So VCloud Air is basically a cloud service where if you're growing out of your own data center, you can go and buy more resources from VCloud Air. So what do we provide? We provide compute, storage, networking, and security. So basically what you have today. So today you're probably running vSphere in your own data centers. VCloud Air is also built on vSphere, so it's built on the same components that you use in your own data centers. Okay? But on top of that, we layer additional services. So if you're looking for a cloud service and infrastructure as a service, you don't want to manage that as a totally new entity. You don't want new tools and new processes to do it. So what we layer on top of this is actually hybrid management. It's a very nice word for basically a plugin for vCenter. So with VCloud Air, you have your own data center, you have your own vCenter, and we extend that into the cloud. And basically you do the same kind of management that you do in your own data center with VCloud Air. Additionally, you can buy desktop as a service and disaster recovery. So now we're already talking use cases. Infrastructure as a service is just being able to run a virtual machine. So what is disaster recovery? Well, I would assume that most of you don't have 2 data centers. Is that correct? Anyone here who has 2 data centers? So a couple of guys. Anyone here who wishes they had 2 data centers? Some hands as well. So this would be a good way for you guys to get an additional data center without building it yourself. Now, building a data center could easily cost millions. But with VCloud Air, you can go and buy disaster recovery as a service. And I'll dive more into the technicalities of it later on. But we don't stop with the infrastructure services. We actually layer a couple of extra services on top of that. First one is platform as a service. Now, infrastructure as a service is all around running a virtual machine with an operating system and applications and stuff. But platform as a service is actually where we skip the whole operating system layer. So why bother with the operating system? It's mostly just annoying to patch it all the time, right? So with platform as a service, you bring your own code and we run it for you. That's it. Bring the code, say start, and it'll run. Okay? But for most code, it's useful to have a database. So a new service just starting at VCloud Air is database as a service, where you basically say, I want a database, I want it to be this fast, this size, yes, I would like a backup routine. With that, you will get an ODBC string, and off you go. You can use that database. So then you can build easy and fast and modern applications really easy on this platform. And another thing are mobile services. So to be able to accelerate the development of mobile applications as well. So that's the basis of VCloud Air. So how do you go and buy VCloud Air? As I said, it's not a license that you buy for your own data center. It's more around a subscription model. So we have 3 different ways of buying VCloud Air and an additional one that was just announced that I will tell afterwards. So the first way to buy vCloud Air would be a dedicated cloud. So you might want to have this in a controlled manner. You might want to know where your virtual machines and applications are. Then dedicated cloud is for you. What we actually do is, in our data centers, we dedicate at minimum 3 hosts to you. So you will have 3 physical boxes running vSphere and all your virtual machines that we know these are yours. But if you're not that dedicated, you could go for the virtual private cloud. In the virtual private cloud, you'll get a slice of resources, but it'll be part of a bigger cluster of resources. So you'll run together with other people's virtual machines. The thing is, vSphere is the only platform that can actually guarantee resources for each virtual machine. And we do that both on storage, on network, and CPU and memory. So there will never be an issue where one virtual machine, maybe from another client, would interfere with your virtual machines and applications. We can guarantee that. And the final way of purchasing vCloud Air would be as a disaster recovery solution. And I'll get more into that later on. So an interesting thing with vCloud Air is it's all backed by VMware Global Support Services. And you might not know these guys, but if you have vSphere in your data center today, you actually have unlimited calls to our global support services. If you've ever have an incident, you would already have created what we call a service request or support request. And it's the same guys that supports vCloud Air. So if something goes wrong in your own data center or in vCloud Air data center, it's one phone call, one phone number to call, the same number. So where can you get vCloud Air? Well, it's a virtual service. You can get it anywhere in the world, but we have to put it somewhere, right? So the locations today are mostly in the US, in Japan, and we have a data center in the UK, just outside of London. In VMworld this week, we announced that we are building a new data center in Germany. So then we have 2 options in Europe. And if you're saying, well, that's not good enough, I want it to be within this country or within the region at least. Well, no problem. What I'm telling you about here is the VMware branded vCloud Air. We do have many partners, including Atea, that are running their own version of vCloud Air. So we call that vCloud Air network providers. So you can go to VMware.com and you can search for vCloud Air providers in your area. Okay? It'll be built on exactly the same pieces as vCloud Air. It'll most likely look the same. So you can get the same service from our many partners as well. And what is the basic strength of vCloud Air? Well, first of all, we build on the existing investments you've done in applications, data, people, and processes. So what does that mean? Well, basically it means that you don't have to go and change anything in your virtual machines or in your applications in order to make them cloud ready. Okay? You can actually take a virtual machine and an application, migrate it into vCloud Air, and start running it right away. And you can even migrate it back again and run it in your own data center. So what you can do with vCloud Air is basically extend your own data center. You can start developing modern applications by using the database as a service and platform as a service and mobility services. So you avoid these information islands, basically. So with vCloud Air, it's a seamless extension of your own data center. If you look at other cloud providers, it is mostly either you rewrite the application or you convert your virtual machines into this cloud platform, and you're basically stuck there. It's a full conversion to get your workloads back again. But here, it's an extension of your data center. We even extend your network. So it'll be the same network that is running in your own data center and in vCloud Air. So what is our differentiation from VMware? It's basically this one word, hybridity. Now, what is hybridity? Well, a hybrid is sort of a mix of 2 things, right? You all know the Toyota Prius, which is a hybrid car. It both has a fuel engine and an electrical engine. So what do we do with Hybridity from VMware? Well, let me just read this aloud. Hybridity means the seamless extension of on-premises infrastructure to the cloud that enables application and data mobility while retaining control via existing people, processes, tooling, and automation. Whew. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, basically it means the seamless extension of on-premise infrastructure means you take your own existing current data center and you stretch it into the cloud. So you don't add a new, different way of consuming resources onto your own, you don't build a new silo for running virtual machines and applications. You basically grow or extend your existing VMware installation. And then you get application and data mobility, but most importantly, you do it with the existing people, the existing processes, tooling, and automation. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it means everything that you've been doing in your own data center with your VMware platform, you now do on the VCloud Air platform. So you don't have to change your ways of doing, for example, automation if you do any scripting. You don't have to change your monitoring tools. You don't have to change the processes around how do I deploy a virtual machine. And basically, you don't have to train your people because they will know what vSphere is. So they will also know how to manage VCloud Air. If we look at our competitors, the most challenging things about our competitors is, first of all, if we look at the top, you need to rewrite bits and pieces of applications in order to make them run in Amazon or in Asia. And I'll come back to the reason why later. Integration of networks can be, difficult. With VCloud Air, it's an extension, so we can do it via VPN, or we can even have your network provider connect directly into VCloud Air. Secondly, you have to find new management tools because it's a new platform. And fourthly, you would have to learn new processes and new skills. How do we do with VCloud Air? Well, first of all, we extend compute, storage, and networking infrastructure. I won't get into the technicalities, but basically you can consume VCloud Air, as I said, as a plugin in your vCenter management platform. So you just add the plugin and you can see your VCloud Air resources and you can manage it from there. That means that we mobilize applications and data. So suddenly you could, if you had workers that were flying all over Europe, you could add an Exchange server into the UK data center and into the German data center. And suddenly they would have close proximity to data. So let's take a different view on our competitors. So with VCloud Air, you get fully redundant virtual machines. It does not mean that the virtual machine itself is redundant, but the infrastructure is. If you look at our competitors, as I said, you need to rewrite bits and pieces of your application. So what our competitors provides is a sometimes unreliable platform. So what most people using, for example, Amazon Web Services do is they write their application so that the application itself is resilient, so that the application itself is redundant. So they cannot rely on the infrastructure, so they build in replication and failover mechanisms and such into the application, which makes it, of course, harder to maintain the application. With VCloud Air, you can trust the platform, it'll always run, and if it's not running, it'll at least give you a reboot of a virtual machine and move it to a different host. So the functionality that you have today. If we look at what we can do with the virtual machines, we do fast automatic restarts if something goes down. With our competitors, you have to first find monitoring, monitor it yourself, and then do a manual restart. With vCloud, with vSphere as the foundation, we do automatic performance optimization. Now, what does that mean? Well, basically, if you're a technical guy, you would know the features of the vSphere platform. We have tool or a feature called DRS that basically load balances everything so that we don't get these bottlenecks or hotspots in the data center. With our competitors, if you Google tips and tricks for best performance on Amazon, you would quickly find this statement here. It says, if you need a reliable platform, or if you need reliable performance on Amazon, for example, the best practice is to buy twice the amount of resources that you need. So if you need one virtual machine, you buy two, you run performance tests, and you throw out the one that is performing poorly. That is a general practice for Amazon Web Services. The reason is they build these pods, they pour in virtual machines until it's sort of full, they start a new pod, and then they start pouring in virtual machines there. So of course you want to be some of the first virtual machines that end up in a pod, so you'll get good performance. But the thing is, you don't know. So you just have to buy a lot of resources, test them out, and throw out the ones that doesn't work. Now, we don't do that with our platform. We don't sell more than it can actually handle. And we can do maintenance without downtime, just as you do in your own data centers. With our competitors, you know, I was actually thinking this is marketing who has written that you have guaranteed downtime. But yesterday I was in Riga, and a couple of systems administrators approached and said, well, we're really interested in VCloud Air because we're looking at a new platform for our web services. And I said, so what are you doing today? Well, they are using Azure, so Microsoft Azure, or Azure, or whatever it's called. But they're looking at migrating away from it because every month they have an unpredicted breakdown for some reason. So they know that at least once a month they will have some kind of downtime. And of course they can't live with that. A web server is your company's face to the world, right? So it's not only marketing, it's actually a true story. So what are the main use cases for VCloud Air? I would like to elaborate on two of these. So the first one would be dev and test. And why is that? Well, it's because your current data center, you've probably invested on the best servers, so the best hardware, the best network, the best licenses, of course. You focus very much on stability and the fact that it should never break down. Is that right? Excellent. But there is a different breed of people, and they're called developers. So do they need stability? Do they need everything to stay the same all the time? No. They like the services and the virtual machines and the resources right now. If it's stable, doesn't really matter. They just need resources so they can go and develop and create new ideas. So how does that mix with the way you run your current data centers? Not that good. So why not go and buy some VCloud Air and give it to your developers and say, here, off you go. Consume the resources any way you like. Create one monster VM or create 1,000 small VMs. I don't care. Just go and use it. Now, if you create something that is actually worth keeping, you can migrate it back into your own data center and treat it as a production machine where you want stability. Okay? So that's a perfect use case. Another one would be, of course, disaster recovery. So if you want to be able to fail over your virtual machines or workloads in case of a disaster, that's VCloud Air again. So let's have a look at how to do that. First of all, it's about a 15-minute install. Okay? After that, you can basically fail over your virtual machines after an initial sync. So we have to copy all the data into VCloud Air. If that's too much data, we can also accept a USB disk with all your virtual machines. So what can run here? Basically, we have support for the same 90 plus operating system and 5,000 applications that you have in your own platform. So there are no limits to what you can move into the VCloud Air while doing a disaster recovery. Pricing is around $800 a month for the first terabyte and $100 per additional terabyte. So you see, pricing is not really that high. It's a lot cheaper than building a new data center anyways. Other things that you can do. Well, You could build this continuous delivery platform. So a new service that was just announced is actually a sort of a developer framework that provides version control and build automation and dependency management for your developers. So for your developers, this is not just infrastructure pieces. It's not just virtual machines. It's actually a lot of the services that they need on top of that. So VCloud Air, it was used to be called VMware VCHS, so vCloud Hybrid Services. And while it was called that, we actually won the Interop Cloud winner in 2014, so this year. It was started a year ago, VCHS, and now it was rebranded into VCloud Air. But in April, this company called RightScale did a survey, and they surveyed which public clouds were actually being used by customers. And if you have a look here, you can see that VCHS, which is now VCloud Air, was actually the second most used by enterprises and the fourth most used by SMB customers. So in just a year, we've actually taken the second place. I think it will take more than a year to beat Amazon at being number one, but eventually we will get there. If you're looking into this VCloud Air and thinking, well, is it secure enough? Are they really serious, these VMware guys? Well, we've done a lot of work with the US government, which might not be interesting here, but we've also certified it via ISO 27001, and it's also being HIPAA certified. So if you're into the healthcare industry, these certifications would most likely be interesting to you. So what do we do with VCloud Air? Well, again, it's an extension of your data center. We layer on top of that additional services that enables you to modernize your applications and create new applications. And we provide reliability, performance, and security. So, is there time for a quick demo? Excellent. So this is basically VCloud Air. Now, if you look at the top here, we haven't rebranded everything yet. So it was recently announced at VMworld that we would change the name into VCloud Air. So this is my data center. I have one virtual data center. In this data center, I have 10 gigahertz of CPU, and I have 20 gigabytes of memory and 2 terabytes of storage. So my storage is all SSD accelerated. Of course, that could cost a little extra, but I like the speed. I also have 2 public IP addresses here. So that means that I can set up 2 web services, for example. But I could always purchase more if I needed to. So in here I have a couple of virtual machines running. I can see gateways, which would be my network configuration. And that would, if I had connected my own data center into VCloud Air, I could manage that from here. Let me show you how easy it is to consume resources. So I click Add Virtual Machine. I choose which data center I want to run it in. And these are virtual data centers, of course. So if you bought a big chunk of VCloud Air, you could slice it up into different departments or different users. So you could control which kind of resources they could use. And then I'm asked, which template do I want to deploy from? And as you see here, I have 4 Linux flavors and a couple of Windows servers. Some of them even have the SQL instance installed. And if you look here, the Linux servers are free. That means I've already bought a virtual data center, so I do pay for that. But additional services on top of that is free. The Windows instances requires a license. So in this case, I haven't put my own Windows license into VCloud Air, so I would buy that as a service. And the cheapest instance here is around $20 per month. Now, I could, of course, provide my own licenses, and then every instance would be free afterwards. So I go and choose CentOS and continue. Give it a name. I don't know the number that I'm up to. Here we go. This is the name in VCloud Air, and this is the name of the computer, so the computer name itself. I go deploy, and that's basically it. Now, it usually takes around 2 minutes to deploy a virtual machine. As you can see here, it's starting. And it takes 30 seconds to 1 minute to power it on. So in 3 minutes, your developers could be up and running and start to develop new funny stuff. As I said, VCloud Air is both compute, storage, and networking security. So if I look into the gateways section here and go into my data center, I can add NAT rules, firewall rules, additional networks, and manage my public IPs. So of course for NAT rules, that would be for allowing my servers to be public to the world. The firewall rules is for, well, yeah, firewall rules, if I needed any. Those can be from outside to inside, from inside to outside, or in between virtual machines. And networks are basically, if you want to have a, let's say you're developing a SharePoint portal. You have a domain controller, you have a SQL server, and you have your application servers running on one network. So if you needed a copy of that for development, you would be in trouble, because you would have to copy the data, and then you would have to change the virtual machines to be able to run together. Well, here in VCloud Air, everything is virtual, even networking. So here you would go and add a network. This network could have exactly the same IP address scope, everything as the previous network, and you could copy an entire SharePoint portal into that network, power it on, and it wouldn't conflict with the other copy. So a very easy way to do fast development. Now my virtual machine was done, I saw. So here I have test 12, and I go power on, and that's it. Any questions?
In which data center this is stored right now?
Right now,
In the UK?
I think this is the one in the UK, yeah.
How long is the response time? And
Let me try. So, ping vchs.vmware.com.
This data center server that you're running?
Oh, this is from my computer, but it's not open for ping. And I haven't opened any external IP addresses. That'll be difficult for me to test right now, but I would assume that from here to the UK is between 10 and 20 milliseconds. I would think that's reasonable. I think you go through Sweden? Probably. That could be faster even. You could do the test yourself.
Can you choose your country?
Yes, you can. So it's free for you to choose which country and which data center. So if you choose one of the US data centers, you can actually select which one you want to run in. Now in the UK there is only one data center, so the drop down is very short. But eventually when the data center comes up, you'll be able to choose UK and Germany. But I advise you to go to vcloud.vmware.com and search for local data centers as well. So I know we have at least 16 VCloud Air providers in Denmark alone. So there's a lot to choose from, including Atea.
On the networking configuration, when you get the public IP address, is it fully open, or do you have some firewall or some other security stack between that?
Yeah, good question. So sorry, I was supposed to repeat all the questions. So the question is, with the public IP addresses, is it fully open, or is there some limitations there? Well, first of all, you would have to create the NAT rules to pass everything through, but you could do just a full netting. So every port on this IP address goes to this virtual machine. And then you would use the built-in firewall rules to change the ports that are open and closed. So basically, you can forward everything. Is that?
Still netted.
It's netted, yes. Because the inside virtual machines has a local IP address. Yeah. So it's the network that owns the public IP address. Does that make sense? All right.
How much IP addresses can I get?
Well, with the dedicated, you get, sorry, how many IP addresses can you get with VCloud Air? With the dedicated option, you get 3 IP addresses as a starting point. And with the virtual private cloud, you get 2 IP addresses as a starting point. But you can buy additional ones if you need it. I don't think there is, well, there is some limit, of course, to IP addressing, but you would just buy additional ones if you need it.
What's the cost of the one Windows server?
The cost, what is the cost of the Windows server? So the smallest Windows instance that I showed you there with a small price tag on it, that would be $20 per month. And of course, more CPUs, more memory, it grows in the license cost. And also if it goes into enterprise or data center edition. Okay. So I now remember 2 new services that was just added. So one was a new way of buying resources in VCloud Air. It was just announced this week. It's called VCloud Air On Demand. So what I've talked to you guys about today is that you buy a chunk of resources and then you start using it. But with VCloud Air On Demand, you just provide your credit card information and you can buy virtual machines as like standalone entities. So you don't have to buy the virtual data center first and then provision inside. Second one was called, I'm not good with these names. It was just announced anyway. It's a functionality where you ask your network provider to build a connection into VCloud Air. You ask us to do the same, and we'll actually connect with your network provider. So you will have basically direct connection from your data center into VCloud Air. Also a new service. So with that, sorry.
I have one question about the templates.
Yes.
Can you show the list again?
Yes.
Who chooses templates there?
Good question. So I go add virtual machine, choose my own data center. And you see here, there is 2 catalogs. There is the VMware catalog, which is of course things that we think that you need. But you could go into my catalog. Now, right now I don't have a catalog, but my administrator could build one, and he could also upload ISO files and templates for virtual machines.
Thank you.
So, in that case, or if I needed a different size or different kind of virtual machine, I would go and say, create my virtual machine from scratch. And then my vCloud Director portal would open if it hadn't been blocked. Anyways, in there, I can say create new virtual machine, and I can assign exactly the number of CPUs and memory and disk, and add an ISO file and then boot it. Okay, so I can build it totally from scratch if I need it. So a lot of different options depending on the time that you have. With that, I will say thank you very much. Oh, by the way, a quick commercial. VCloud Air is actually free for the first month if you sign up for 3 months. Marketing stunt, right? No, but if you continue your subscription or cancel it after 1 month, we will refund the first month. So it's a sort of risk-free, I think. Well, thank you very much.